welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, Mitch Smiley. Now, when Mitch was 17, he was sentenced to the Californian prison system and served 38 years, being released at age 56. Since leaving prison, he has also started his own YouTube channel to share his stories to inspire others to find the light in the darkest of any situations and to promote the alternative to crime and gang life. Now, Mitch is an artist and many other things. Mitch Smiley, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Mitch, you have such an interesting story, and I'm sure you've been told that so many times, right?
Uh,
Yeah,
Occasionally.
yeah. Just if you was to sort of say to us, very quickly, just what it is that you went through, and how long you served.
Well, I went through 38 years of California prison system, um, 38 years of hell, yeah, basically. I did a few years in youth authority prior to getting out and going to prison in California. So, yeah.
So I know you've spoken about this before, Mitch, as well. When we talk about, if we were to mention your childhood, so was it a problematic childhood, do you think?
Yeah, so I grew up in a broken home. The guy I thought was my dad split when I was about a year and a half old. And my mom ended up marrying a guy who raised me, who's my stepdad. Um, he was an alcoholic, and my mom drank as well. And my mom's kind of a narcissistic person. Everything's kind of about her. And my stepdad was a real hard ass. He was a roofer, an alcoholic, and a Korean War vet. So he was kind of a hard dude, kind of abusive. Physically abusive, verbally abusive. With alcoholics, it's like one day they come home drunk and they're happy, and next day they come home drunk and they want to beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That is for some people who won't understand that sort of violence. It sort of carries on, don't it, into your sort of adulthood as well. Do you think for you? Do you think it did carry on?
Oh yeah, I carried on for quite a long time. I mean, most of my most of my criminal behavior was due to violence. Like when part of my dad's thing was, don't ever let anyone put their hands on you, but of course he did. But I got in fights at school a lot. I used to kind of get in fights with bullies, and then I assaulted a couple of school teachers. Like I beat up my physical education teacher, and you know stuff like that. Carried into my life. It just carried over. I mean, if you raise a kid in violence, he's going to become a violent person.
That's interesting. That it's because I'm doing a documentary. We just spoke about this off air as well, and yeah, most of the people involved. Well, one of the main people involved that committed the murder, he did have a pretty bad childhood as well.
Yeah. And of course, I got my case is a bar fight. They got me sent to prison, and one of my co-defendants stabbed the guy that I was engaged in a fight with. So he
Let's go to that point. So you're 17 years old, and
right.
okay, and these are your friends, obviously, right? That you're with, and you go to a bar, and just very briefly, just take us through that. What happened?
Well, I thought they were my friends. I only knew them for about 2 or 3 months, and there was a bar down the street I used to go drink at, and it's a biker bar. And we were sitting at the bar, and a guy came and sat next to us, and started talking crazy, and kind of fat mouthing us, and he hit my co-defendant in the face with a beer pitcher who was sitting on my right hand side, and he knocked him down. And I got up and hit the guy a few times until he got up, and they engaged in a little fight, and they kind of stumbled out onto the sidewalk. And when I went out on the sidewalk, the guy was sitting on my friend's chest, beating him, hitting him in the face. So I started kicking him, and I was kicking him in the side, kicking him in the head, and stomping him, and then one of my other co-defendants stabbed the guy, and he died. So all three of us were tried and convicted of second-degree murder. I was convicted of second-degree murder by vicarious liability. In California, if you're involved in a crime and someone else does something, then you're guilty, aiding and abetting. In my case, it's by vicarious liability. So I got
That
15
could
years
be,
alive.
as you've mentioned in other interviews, like me, I'm driving a car, you did the crime, whatever it may be.
Right.
We,
Yeah.
on the get out basically, and because I'm driving you and I'm, part of that, then, and yeah, people don't understand that, I don't think, do they? That's
Yeah, like if you and I are in a car and I go into a liquor store and you're driving the car, even if you don't know what's going on, and I go in a liquor store and rob it and get in the car and drive off, you're guilty of aiding and abetting my robbery. And if we get caught, you'll get the same amount of time as me, basically.
wow. And so you've got 15 to life basically for that.
Right,
And
right. Now,
what does that mean for people? Because some people not from the US will be watching this, and what does that actually mean?
well, it's supposed to mean that your term is 15 years and life is the exception. So what it means is that you go to prison. I was eligible for parole in 2/3 of my term, which is 10 years. I went in front of the parole board, and the parole board, if you have a term to life, you have to go in front of the parole board. They have other guys in California. Almost everybody gets a set term, except for guys who are convicted of murder, attempted murder, and kidnapping. Those guys get life sentences of one degree or another. So we got a governor in '91 who changed the game. He said life is the rule and the 15 is the exception. And yeah, so things kind of changed.
Yeah, I mean, what was that like when you got that sentence? What was you thinking in your head when that was read out to you?
Well, everyone was telling me, "I don't worry, youngster," because I was 17. I turned 18 in county jail. They go, "Oh, you just do 10 years, don't worry about it." And my lawyer told me, "No, no, no." He says, "You're going to do 10 years and then you're going to be eligible for parole. And if you're messing up in there, they can hold you for the rest of your life." And it was kind of a blow to me because I was a screw up, and I knew that I wasn't just going to go to prison and program and get out in 10 years. I never expected to do 38 years, but I knew I wasn't going to do more than 10 years. But it was kind of it was a strong blow. I just kind of set my mind at, like, party's over. I'm going to be in prison for quite a long time. You
What
know.
did you think of the person that had whose life had been taken at that point? Was there any sort of reflection at that age of like, well, shit, I've not just taken this man's life, but it's the family man of the family of that man, and also all the friends and everything else. Did that ever go through your head?
Not at the time, no. At the time, I was just pissed off that he came in the bar and started a fight. And our mentality was, he was in a motorcycle club, and I grew up around bikers in California, the whole biker thing, and out of San Diego, California. And so our mentality was, he knew the job was hard when he took it. And he shouldn't have came in there talking smack without expecting to get beat down and possibly, killed. So, my mentality was, I was pissed off that he came in there, started a fight, and got me a life sentence. The fact that he was dead, or that he might have had a family, friends, parents, kids, wife, whatever, that was farthest thing from my mind.
Have you ever thought to yourself, if you could speak to that younger part of you, that 17-year-old or 18, what would you say to that part of you?
I'd probably say, like, look, because at the time you just feel like the world's taking a shit on you, and so you're gonna go shit on the world, and so I would just say, hey, man, there's people out there that care about you and that'll help you get your way in life, but you got to slow it down, and you got to slow your roll with the violence. other people don't, they don't deserve to be the butt of your angry, aggressive, outburst, and you know, if you slow it down and get a grip on things, people will help you accomplish your goals and have a decent life out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And what was your relationship like? I mean, you've spoken about your family upbringing, but what was your relationship like with your family at the time? And do you have any brothers or sisters, or did you have back then, or was it you only
Uh,
child?
Back then, I had no brothers or sisters. My family lived in Northern California. My mom moved to San Diego, which is Southern California. 600 miles from where the rest of my family lived. So I had no brothers or sisters. I had no family around. And by the time that I this crime happened, I was pretty much living with my friend and his mom. She was a biker chick, and uh, I was on my own pretty much. My mom and stepdad had long since been divorced. They got divorced when I was 12, and I was pretty much on my own.
Now, is mum still with us?
Yeah, she is. She's around. She's in her late 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Well, did she come to see you when you was in the prison system?
Yeah, occasionally she'd come visit.
Right. Okay. I can imagine that was supportive. Do you know what I mean? Just to see mum sometimes. So, okay, you get into the prison system. You're 18 years old. So, what did you sort of experience initially when you first got in?
Um, as soon as I got to prison, I ended up going to the hole, which is administrative segregation, and then SHU is security housing unit. There was a lot of racial tension. I was in a unit where they had some stabbings, and I lasted about 2 weeks, and I ended up getting a stabbing. And I went to SHU, and I ended up doing like 4.5 years in the SHU before I got released back out to the main line. And it was a culture shock, man, because it was you hear the stories about prison, and until you see it, it's a whole nother deal. I mean, there's a lot of violence. um I think I was 19, late in my 18th year or early 19th. I saw my first murder in prison, and all the prison gangs were out and about, on the main lines and in the hole, and there was a lot of stabbings and a lot of killings, and California back then, if you were engaged in an act of violence, they would shoot you. Most prisons had shotguns and mini 14s. Folsom had mini 14s. That was it. And they also had 38 pistols. So they would shoot you, and sometimes they would kill you for a fist fight. If they saw you slap somebody, they would shoot you. And definitely, if they saw you stabbing somebody, they would shoot you, and they would probably kill you. So it was very stressful, man. People have no idea what it's like. Then you have gangs, and you have guys. When I went to prison, I grew up around bikers, and I figure, hey, guys that are in prison, they're criminals, they're outlaws, they're gangsters, this and that. And then when you get to prison, you realize it's really not like that. Uh, a lot of guys are in prison because they have problems and they don't know how to deal with them. A lot of guys are drug addicts, most of them, and they're out robbing, stealing, and sometimes killing so they can get drugs, and my thing was, I've always considered myself be an outlaw, outlaw motorcycle rider, and my thing was, they have a saying, one on all and all on one. So if your friends get into a mess, then you got to back their play, and they're going to back you. And it doesn't matter if you're alone or with a group of your friends. When it's on, it's on. And so my thing was, I was in there because I was in a fight with some friends, living that outlaw lifestyle, and now I'm surrounded by guys that are dope fiends, and it was a very eye-opening experience.
Yeah, I bet it
Yeah,
was. I mean, and at that time, I mean, yeah, you would have had no idea that you was going to be there 38 years. Do you know what I mean?
right.
No. So, did you join a gang?
No, no. Joining a prison gang. I mean, like I said, I grew up around motorcycle riders and outlaw biker type guys, and joining a prison gang to me was it didn't make any sense because um, two words, prison gang, right? It's a gang that exists in the prison system, and I wasn't going to dedicate my life to being in prison forever. And even though it almost ended up being like that, it wasn't due to my own accord. I wasn't going to voluntarily do that. Excuse me. So the gang thing really it wasn't for me. And then plus, you get to prison and you see guys turning on each other, and you see a lot of backstabbing, a lot of politicking on each other, and you realize that all that stuff really isn't what it's cracked out to be. Guys are calling each other brother one day, and next day they're stabbing each other. So
That's difficult, man. That is so. Yeah. Wow. But obviously, there's sort of different gangs. Different racially segregated kind of gangs. Do you know what I mean? Um,
yeah,
was that
yeah.
the same back then when you first started, and is that still there now, or even it's worse in a sense? Do you know what I mean?
I think it was worse back then. California prisons are very racially segregated. Um, all the gangs are pretty much racially segregated. They do have over the years, I ran into a few white dudes that were associated with black street gangs, and they had a hard time. Now it's a little different. It's kind of a hands-off policy where guys don't, they're not. They don't mess with the white dudes that run with black gangs on the street. But back when I was in prison, they did. They would stab them, try to run them off. Um, I interviewed a couple of them on my channel who were, they did their terms on the main line. They had a pretty rough way to go, and they, hats off to them. They're pretty stand up. But
Yeah, yeah. Just remind us of your YouTube channel. What the name of it?
oh, my YouTube channel is Hard Intentions. Yeah,
And the
but
website?
oh, I have my website is also Hard Intentions. We sell shirts and art and stuff.
Yes, yeah.
But
'Cause we're going to get into your artwork because you do some really amazing stuff and how you got into that as well. And why the name Hard Intentions?
well, what are your intentions? Whatever they are, do it hard. Like pray hard, work hard, fight hard, love hard. Whatever you do, do it hard, right?
Right, right. I'm with you
That's
there.
kind of the motto behind it.
Yeah. What what how many parole hearings did you go to actually?
I went to 14 parole hearings and I canceled 9.
Cancelled
Um,
9. Wow.
yeah, I mean, at some point in prison, they at the time, like around 86, they locked up all the prison gangs and they gave them indefinite shoe terms. So they were in the hole, and segregated from the general population. And prison got a little easier. It was still pretty rough, but I just kind of settled in, and I started going to board, and we got Governor Pete Wilson came in 1991 and said, if you have a life sentence, pretty much you're done. Then we had another governor said, if you have a life sentence, you're going to parole in a pine box. So, I just settled in, like I'm going to do this time. I figured I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. I didn't want to spend it. I wanted to spend it as comfortable as possible. And I'm an artist. I got into tattooing when I was young, and then that led to drawing and then painting. And so that was my thing. I used to tattoo for a hustle, make money. And then I started doing artwork for money and for pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, what was that point when you got into artwork? Was that when you kind of said to yourself, well, actually, you met someone, didn't you? Let's start it from there. You actually met someone that wasn't
Yeah,
a tattooist, and he inspired you, didn't he? He just basically said, "Look, you can do this as well. You knew you could,"
right,
and he was your sort of
right.
mentor.
Yeah, I had guys help me get into the tattoo game, but when I later on around 93, I met a guy, Danny. He was just a straight artist, and I showed him some of my drawings, my tattoo work, and I used to watch him paint. And then he was a Chicano dude out of Orange County. He was a little older than me, and he gave me a piece of canvas and a paintbrush, and he gave me red, blue, yellow, and white paint. He says, "Hey, go practice with this." And I went painted an owl, and he said, "Man, he goes, I couldn't have done a better job myself." He just started loading me up with art supplies and encouraging me to get into art, and I did. And you know, it's solitude's a pretty good thing, man, when you have something to do like that, because art is challenging, it's problem solving, and it's also an escape. And I just fell in love with it. And I ran into Danny like 20 years later at another prison where they had no hobby, no art stuff, and he loaded me up with some of the supplies that he had been hanging on to, and he was just it was good to see him, and let him know how my art had progressed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is great. And I guess did you make a choice at that point where it's either, serve my term and be miserable, and because it's quite a dark energy, isn't it? It's quite a dark. It can be a dark place mentally if you don't snap out of that thinking, right?
Right, right. It's real easy to go down the rabbit hole. It's all it takes is one split second and you're in serious you're in a serious situation that could lead to dire consequences. I mean, like I said, they got guys doing, there's guys that spent 30, 35 years or more in the hole, and that's in segregation, and that's solitude. And that was not how I wanted to do my time. And there's some pretty hateful stuff in there, and it's easy to get sucked into hateful, negative stuff. And I just decided, man, that you always have to maintain a position in California prisons that you will defend yourself, and you can't let people run over you, because once you start letting that happen, it never ends. So there's that. But on the flip side of that, I wanted to just kind of live a peaceful existence and be comfortable and do my artwork. That was where I was at. I like music and I like art, and that's where I was. That was what was gonna carry me through, and that's what did carry me through.
Yes, absolutely, it did. Which is what you're doing now as well. And like I say, we'll talk about that more in a minute. What was some of the most violent sort of experiences you had there, like with the riots and stuff? Because I mean, and also, right, you've been to many different prisons, haven't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. They transfer you around a lot in California prisons. They don't like you to get too comfortable. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you'd think seeing a murder would be some of the most violent stuff you've seen, but the most like when you're on the yard and someone gets stabbed and killed, it doesn't really affect you. You kind of develop an outer shell that says like, it's none of my business. Some of the most violent stuff was being on the yard when there's riots going on, because riots are, they're so unpredictable. Guys get shot by the gun towers, guys get stabbed. You get sprayed with tear gas or pepper spray now, and so the riots. I was in a couple of riots at Lancaster Prison, and then at Corcoran Prison there was a riot on the yard. When I was there, it was pretty ugly, and it was. I remember it was raining, and we ended up having to lay on the yard for about 6 or 7 hours in the rain while they sorted everything out. They brought ambulances on the yard to take guys off the yard. It's pretty nasty.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And what questions do I have? There's a few actually in my head. Like, even like when like when you have your celly, right? can you don't get to choose your celly, do you? In a sense, or if you're not
Yeah,
getting on with that person, can you tell him to go?
yeah, you can choose your cellie. Um, yeah, California prisons, you can say, hey, I want this guy as a cellie, and you do the paperwork. And um, especially when I was working as an emergency plumber down in Donovan, I just tell the lieutenant, hey, I want this guy in my cell, and they'd move him in my cell. um, but yeah, I've had a few cellies that I didn't get along with. I tell them, hey man, I'm gonna go to work tomorrow, and when I come back, I want you out of my cell. And and they'd move. Um, that's kind of how I did my tattoo work. Some guys would just run guys in and out of their cell, puts a lot of heat on them. Uh, Tattooing in prison's illegal. So what I would do is I tattooed for money. So I would have the guy send the money to my books. And then when I was done working on my celly, they would trade cells. So he would be the next guy to move in my cell. I did multiple tattoos like sleeves, backs, chest, a lot of like bodysuit type tattoos, which is big in California prisons. And so I would move him in, do his tattoo work. And then, 3 or 4 months could go by, and then they would trade cells with the next guy in line to get tattooed. So that's kind of how I did my cellies. And I did have a celly for about 5 years one time, 4 or 5 years. Dirty Dennis from Oakland. He was an older guy. He got busted in 1970, I think. So he had been down, you know, 8 or 9 years prior to my getting arrested. So he was, he was kind of a mentor to me. We were cellies for quite a long time. Yeah, it was.
Do
We
do
had
you communicate with anyone back in the old prison systems, or you sort of left all that behind?
I do. I communicated with my friend Dave, and he's out now, living in Sacramento. And there's still another guy in there that I do communicate with. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
What was it like? Sort of, how do you mentally get used to that being there sometimes? Did you ever have sort of any panic attacks, like shit, when you wake up and you're like, fuck, I'm still here kind of thing? Do you know what I mean?
it's not a panic attack, but yeah, like I went to CMC West is dorm living, first dormitory living I was in, 90 guys in a dorm. It's old Army barracks. And at that time, I think that was 2013. So, I had like 30 years in or whatever, and 30 something years. So I hated it, man, because all these guys were guys doing short terms. They were shooting dope, trying to politic on a level 2 yard, which is a low security yard, and acting like big prison gangsters in a basically a weak place. And I thought, man, what the fuck am I still doing here? And I told my friends, it's embarrassing being in prison now, um, because of the type of people they have in there now. And now that I'm out here in the world, I see why the people are so different. It's basically because the drugs are different, and it's a whole new.
Because if you want to get drugs in prison, you can get it, but that's going to go against you if you get caught when you do your parole, if that's put on your record, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I quit using drugs a long time ago, like 1998. But drugs are readily available. But the thing is, like the speed now. Back in the day, bikers used to make that crank, and you could snort crank and whatever, and then quit using it and dry out and be kind of normal. Now, all that stuff's coming up out of Mexico, and they're putting fentanyl in it, and they're getting highly addicted, and it also has things in it, man, that are destroying people's their brains. They're becoming mentally ill behind it, and so that's the kind of person that you have in prison. And so when drugs come in, they get the amphetamine psychosis in prison, and you got to live in a dorm with somebody like that. It's not fun. It's not the gangster criminal mentality anymore. Drugs used to be for having fun and making money, and now it's just like it's like this crazy lifestyle. These guys just drugs at all costs. It's just a way out deal. So that's why I say it was really embarrassing to still be in prison with the new breed of guys that are going in with this. It was just ugly. Yeah, I did say, what the fuck am I still doing here?
Right, right. But do you think for those going in prison nowadays, do you think it's easier for them to survive rather than what you had to go back in and back in the early 80s?
Some ways it is, and in some ways it's not, because we had TVs with speakers, we had radios. When I first went to prison, they had guys with turntables and speakers, and we had our own clothes. I had Pendletons, Levi's. The food was pretty good. If you didn't have money to buy canteen, you could survive pretty good off the food in the chow hall. Now, the food is pretty much, you can't eat it. It's so terrible, and the clothes are garbage. You can't have your own personal clothes anymore. And the radios and stuff, now you can have like a little Walkman type radio. That's it. No speakers. So being comfortable in prison now is really hard. It's hard to get comfortable. And the violence on the lower level prisons isn't as bad. The upper levels, now the gangs are back on the main lines. It's a little rough, but in some ways, prison was a lot more violent when I went in. You could die really easy. Yeah, and there was like, people didn't fight; they would just stab you, because you would get shot for fighting. You get shot with a Mini 14 and die if you fought. So guys would just run up on you and stab you 3 or 4 times, and that was the equivalent of a fist fight. And
Damn, damn, damn. And has with you doing your interviews, have you noticed that obviously California is a completely different prison system to some other inmates that have served, in other states? It's just, would you say it's you've just you've seen that it's different?
yeah, it's definitely different. Just the race thing alone, California, the races don't mix. Like, you don't eat with other races, you don't sell up with other races, you don't, it's just a pretty segregated thing. That's for a reason. Other states, it's kind of every man to himself, and it's rough. I mean, California prisons are probably the most violent prisons in the country. I believe. You could get yourself killed in a California prison really easy. You know, I mean, recently they had a guy in a level 3 prison. He killed his cellie and flushed his organs down the toilet and stuffed him in a trash can in the day room. I mean, they found a guy's body folded up in half, stuffed in a trash can. So I mean, that's it's pretty incredible.
Um,
Pretty bizarre.
yeah, yeah. When did you get to that point in prison where you thought, okay, I'm probably not going to get out, or I don't know when it's going to be because the years have just gone by. It's one Christmas to another, birthdays and everything else, right? Where you just said, I surrender. Where did you get to that part of surrender? Do you remember?
Surrender. That's yeah. Around 98, I started going to Catholic mass. We had a priest. He was from Ireland, and I started going to Catholic mass with a friend of mine, and then later on I got baptized, and I started studying, Orthodox Christian literature, and getting heavily involved with my art, and that's when I quit using drugs too. In 1998, I said, I'm done. 97, I flushed a quarter ounce of crank down a toilet. Said I'm done, and then 98, I quit drinking wine, smoking weed, everything. I quit everything. I don't really have a problem with weed or booze, but I just didn't want to give the staff any reason to deny me parole. If they were going to deny me parole, it was going to be because they wanted to, not for something I did wrong. But I said, hey, you know what, man, there's something greater than me. A lot of guys kind of have the mentality that life is them and that's it. And that's kind of there's something greater than me. And I'll yeah, there's a collective, and everybody can be a part of something greater than themselves. And that's kind of where I found it, is in the Orthodox Church. And there's no Orthodox services in the California prison system, so I used to go to the Catholic Mass until I got out. So that's my greater than me, and that's my, what they say, higher power or whatever. And once I quit using, and I quit, I didn't have to pay attention to the politics of the yard and the scuttlebutt, who was doing what, because I wasn't involved with the dope life. Life got really easy, and it became a lot easier to get involved with the, spiritual things in my art, and yeah.
How did you view other inmates that prior to that you may not have viewed real fantastically? Obviously, okay, let's child molesters, right? That's a common one that in prison other inmates find find those people difficult to even be near them. Do you know what I mean? Because
Well, we
yeah,
kill child molesters in California prisons. So I mean, they get protected. They go to PC. Now it's called SNY, and they get. But yeah, guys find out guys are rapists or child molesters. They stab them, kill them, whatever. Yeah, that's for me. That those are two things I kind of still have issue with. Uh, yeah, I still have an issue with that. Because and I always pointed to the one verse, man, that you know, in the Bible, Jesus says, "Hey, anyone that prevents them little children from coming to me, they're better off with a millstone tied around their neck and tossed in the ocean." So that's kind of a warning not to mess with kids, to me.
yeah, but you
Um,
must have come to some sort of peace when you came to this peace, which I know you did, right? Then obviously you knew that there was you wanted to get out. Then do you know what I mean? You wanted to do
yeah, but
something.
I got to the point where, it wasn't, when I was younger, guys used to tell me, "Hey, look, if someone has a killing coming, they're going to get it. You don't have to be the one to give it to them." So that's kind of my mentality. Once I got into like, spiritual stuff in my art real heavy, and I quit using all that. I quit getting involved with yard politics. I thought, well, you know what, man, I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may with these type of guys, and let the youngsters handle that shit. By then I was getting older, and I just wouldn't get involved one way or another. And I just keep my eyes on things, and if something happened to somebody, then that's just what happened. Uh,
I guess what I'm getting to as well, no, and thanks for your answer there. I guess what I'm getting to is that you were more at peace with whatever was around you, as you just said there. So no matter what kind of person's around you, which you may have hated before and still have some disgust for in some sense, but you're more at peace with the inner part of you. Do you know what I mean? Where you know what, I know what
yeah.
I'm doing now, and I see the bigger picture. I'm more than this, and this is just something I've got to go through. Do you feel that? Have you ever considered that? When you say that you're more than, do you think that you are some sort of I call it a soul. I say to people that I think we're a soul having a human experience, or there's a consciousness that's more than our body, right? And when you consider that, it's all obviously then maybe we're where we come from or where we go back to, we're all equal, right? So did that give you
uh, I don't know where we come from. Every soul is different. Every soul is an individual. I remember one time they were talking about cloning, and I forgot who the Pope was. I think it was Ratzinger when he became Pope. He said that even if you clone a human being, he would not have the same soul as the person that they clone. So, saying that each and every person is their own soul. I don't know where we come from, and I hope where I hope to go once I leave. I know that this is not the end of the journey. Like Native American saying says, life is a dream upon which death is the awakening. That's kind of a good analogy for how I see things. This is it's probably more than a dream, but it's not. Uh, of course, I live in a present reality, but this is not. There's something beyond this, and my hope is, and that's faith is based on hope, is that there's something a lot greater than this after this, and that's what I hope to attain. We can't. That's what I'm saying. Like, we can't do it on our own. I don't believe we can get there on our own. I just don't believe that. We didn't make ourselves, and we can't keep ourselves alive indefinitely. I think that what we refer to as death is actually a continuation of our life. Um, and guys say, I'm going to have eternal life. And I think everybody has eternal life. It's just where you spend it is the choice that you make now, based on your behavior. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Do you
uh,
think you became a bit more of a friend to yourself in prison when you sort of came from that space?
oh, yeah. Yeah. And they passed a lot of laws for guys like me who are juvenile offenders because they realize that as a juvenile, you're less culpable for your actions. You don't really understand what your actions are based on, and that's true. But as an adult, I kind of identified, some of the things that led me into, especially the violence as a young guy. And I kind of got at peace with all that, all that stuff. Excuse me. I just kind of let it go, you know.
That was this sort of tough part as well, and it coming to peace with it and letting it go and not letting it eat you up, and also finding that light in such a dark situation. What some people may see as dark, but I think to you, when you got to that point, I think you knew there was light at the end of this, and that you were going to get released at some point. Did you feel that in the end?
I didn't know if I was going to get out or not. I went and did I did a long-term offender program, which was lasted about 2 years. Different had a bunch of different programs involved with the program, like anger management and substance abuse and family relations, all that kind of stuff. It was like 5 or 6 different classes, but it helped prepare me for the board. And I was doing the program. The program was designed by the parole board because for over 20 years they didn't let hardly any of us out. And once the court started telling them, look, man, these you have California was under court order. We had almost 180,000 guys in prison in California. We had the third biggest prison system in the world, and in the state of California. So the courts ordered them to reduce the prison population because of it actually was a medical issue, mental health and medical. I think one person a week was dying due to lack of medical care, and so they had to reduce the prison population. And then the same court said, look, you're keeping these guys in prison forever, and they don't have life without. They have a term to life, and you need to start releasing some of these guys. So I went into the long-term offender program with the intent of working my way out of prison, and I was successful. But my mindset was, even if I do this program, they might not let me out. So I just did the program and benefited from it. I learned. I want to learn all I could from the program. It helped. It was beneficial. It helped me. Solidified a lot of things I already thought, and I learned some new things and coping skills, and in the end, it helped get me out of prison. But what's funny is when I went to the parole board, they didn't ask me anything about the program, but no, but I think they knew that I benefited from the program they would ask you certain questions, and then by the way you answer the questions, they could tell that you learned something from the program. And
What was that like for you,
And they ended
Mitch?
up,
What was that like for you, right? So you're at the parole board hearing. You've been to so many parole board hearings in the past, right? Deny, deny, deny. All of a sudden,
right.
it's yes, we think we think that you've passed everything and you're ready to go back into society. What was that like?
Uh, well, my commissioner was a guy who was he was a warden at Soledad when I was there actually, and some other guys told me, "Oh man, that's the worst board member in the world." And so I told my lawyer, "Hey, can we postpone my hearing?" She goes, "Why?" And I said, "Man, that dude's an asshole. You know, everyone says he's an asshole." And she goes, "Oh no, no, he's just like you guys. He's all right." And I go, "What do you mean he's just like us?" And she goes, "Well, you know, he trained ultimate fighting. He was a Marine. And then he was a correctional officer, worked his way up to warden, and then he became a parole board member. So basically, he was a man's man kind of guy, tough guy, a no bullshit kind of guy." And she said, "As long as your victim isn't a woman or a child or a cop, you know, you're all right." So and so I went in there and yeah, my hearing lasts like 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is relatively short. And I have to say that Randy Grounds, he was that's the most fairest hearing I ever had. He actually listened to me, he would ask me questions, and I felt like he listened to me and you know, and he found me suitable for parole. And then after the hearing, he came out and talked to me, and uh, and he said, "Look, man, because I had gotten busted smuggling tobacco, you know, I got 5 year denial for that. It cost me 5 years of my life, you know." And so he came out and he talked to me. He said, "Look, don't take the easy way out anymore." He goes, "That tobacco thing could have cost you, but and then he told me, look, you know, guys like you are an asset to us. We need guys like you out in the world." He goes, "You got a story to tell, and I want you to tell it." And he said, "You know, when you're able to, I would like you to come back in these prisons and tell it to guys in prison." So I was kind of blown away, man. You know, it was a pretty positive experience, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. There are so many emotions at that point. Do you know what I mean? When he's walking away after telling you that, and it's
Yeah.
wow. And was any of the victims' family there, or was it just there was
No,
no?
not
Okay,
that time.
okay.
No.
But had they been there before on different paroles?
Yeah, when I was in Lancaster, a victim's daughter and her husband showed up on 2 occasions, but yeah, they quit coming. Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I don't really say a whole lot to them. You're not allowed to.
Well, what I mean is,
Uh,
if they were here now, I mean, there's not a lot. I suppose what's done is done, and all. I mean, but also obviously, I know you do feel remorse for it, but I mean, obviously they've got to go through their struggle, haven't they? And you've had to deal with that, haven't you? At some point, like
yeah, I mean, it altered their life. You know, I mean, I grew up in a home without my dad. I grew up in a home, you know, with a stepdad who's abusive and all that because I didn't have my dad. You know, and so you know, I was part of the reason why they lost their dad, and I'm sure it had, you know, some negative consequences for them, and I'm responsible for that. And I'm for that, you know, I'm sorry, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's he had a son and a daughter, and they had to grow up without him, you know, and his, you know, he had brothers and sisters, and yeah,
see in my show, right? We cover things like the idea that well, what if what if when we go back home, I'm just using that word, you can call it whatever you want, right? That actually that person, when we're in a different space, right, beyond all this, actually there is no like blame or nothing like that. It's all just forgiveness. It's all just um, there's just love.
that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be, and who knows? Who knows? Whether we care about some of these earthly things that we care about here. I think we need rules here. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, yeah, and I suppose living with that, that's something that you've got to find a space in you to be able to forgive yourself deep down. Do you know what I mean as well?
Yeah, yeah. Um, those are all, you know, forgiveness is a rough thing, man. It's hard to forgive other people for wrongs that have been done to you. I've been stabbed, I've been shot, like I said, I had shitty upbringing, and so to go through that stuff and forgive the people that have done harm to you, that's one thing. And then, to ask your higher power for forgiveness, that's another thing. And then to really sit down and think, what about all the people that I've harmed? Uh, and have them uh to ask forgiveness for that some way, somehow. I mean, and to be able to accept it, uh that's rough. I mean, it's it's a pretty emotional deal, you
I
know.
I can imagine, but I bet it's goddamn freeing.
Yeah, it's got to be you know,
It's a process, isn't it,
they,
Mitch? It's a
yeah,
process.
like they say in like them groups I took, I remember them saying, it's one thing to give help to other people, but you have to be able to accept help as well. And that's, being able to accept forgiveness is that's a big deal.
Yes, yes, and I love what the parole board gentleman said to you, that one day it'd be great for you to come into the system. I mean, look, you're already doing it, Mitch. Do you know what I mean? You've got your YouTube channel. You're telling people stories, and it's really helpful. I know it is to many people that watch your content and the shows that you go on as well.
Yeah.
Maybe even from a healing process, you don't know who's watching sometimes, do you? Do you know what I mean? It might be a victim of crime, it might be someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We get a lot of emails from people and messages about our channel and how it helps them, and especially people who have drug addiction problems, and some family members of guys who have been to prison. I mean, their family members tell us it helps them understand their son or their family member, the things they went through. And it blows me away, because to me, I'm just telling my story and trying to put a positive message on it. And it just the people that watch our channel and comment to us, it really blows me away, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can you see from what you went through that there is a positive side to it? I mean, I know you can see that, right? But I'm just saying it's obvious, isn't it? You can always turn something so negative, for some people will see it into something at least helpful to other people, and that's what you're doing. Um,
Yeah.
Man, what was that like? Right, so we're talking about the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the early
Yeah.
2000s. You, that day that you're released, and you're in a civilization that, do you even recognize?
Oh, yeah, I did. I mean, guys ask me that, and cars still have four wheels and motorcycles still have two. And, buildings still go up and planes fly, and cell phones are a little. That's kind of a new deal. I still haven't really got the computer thing down. If it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have a YouTube channel, to be honest with you. Um, but I lived in transitional housing, the Francisco homes down in LA, and there was 12 of us. It's in South Central LA, which is kind of rough neighborhood. But there was a black dude there, he's a Muslim cat, and we used to chat. And after a while, he goes, he goes, Smiley, he goes, man, all these other guys come out here and they're on their phone crying about living in South Central with their families. And he goes, man, you didn't do none of that. He goes, you just hit the ground running. And I mean, I was out walking the neighborhood, riding the bus, just doing it. I mean, I was down at the DMV, and I was on the phone with my wife, and she goes, "You're probably the only person I know that would enjoy being at the DMV."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So
why is that, do you think, Mitch? Is that because you really appreciated what you had at that point?
yeah, I had a second chance at life, man, and I was loving it. Everybody liked to be a little farther along and financially and everything else than they are, but I mean, I'm appreciative for what I have, and I would sit at the DMV and I'd see some lady with her baby in a carriage, and the baby's got a cell phone, and I would just laugh and just be like, wow, just, and I would see people's, everyone has their own character and habits and personalities. And I just loved it, man. It was cool.
Well, to me, Mitch, that tells me that you went through so much inner transformation to be at peace in that place. And I think, God, if some people watching this now could just see that, like you say, how to just appreciate anything and everything you've got. Trying to be somewhere where we're not, and being upset by not being there and not being here now. That's what you come across to me. That you're rooted in the now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my thing is like, if you want to be at a certain point in life, then you need to work on it. You need to figure out how to get there. And I was figuring it out. I mean, I had I got a job readiness program. I got a job in LA sweeping the sidewalks and dumping trash cans for a living for like 11.50 an hour or $12 an hour. And then I got another job working down in Skid Row, monitoring public bathrooms, making sure people weren't shooting dope and prostituting and everything else in the public bathrooms, and it was called Pit Stop Monitor. But and basically that's so the homeless people could use the bathrooms. So I worked on Skid Row. I mean, I worked in the worst area of LA, and all these homeless guys would come and thank us because they had gang members charging people to use the bathroom, selling drugs out of the bathroom, pimping stuff, prostituting out of the bathrooms, and they couldn't use them. So they were like, man, we're just so grateful you guys are here, And we had Narcan and stuff in case somebody OD'd, and we had hygiene kits that we pass out. And we developed relationships with these people down on Skid Row that are living on the sidewalks in tents, man. And LA has the biggest homeless population in California, man. They have, it's insane. They're probably up to about 100,000 now. And it's just,
well, right now it will be, won't it, with COVID? Yeah, COVID. Yeah.
But I found there was a little bit of I don't want to say joy, but I mean, there was a little bit of satisfaction working down there and getting to know those people. I mean,
well, you think, right? I mean, how many people like just want to come to the States sometimes, come to the US, and start a life, and would do anything just to even have a job like that and be an American citizen? Do you know what I mean? The appreciation just from that sense, let alone being locked up for 38 years.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of like flashbacks sometimes? Like you 1 minute you're here where we are right now, but then you can just flash back to being back in prison in one of those particular decades that you were there.
Uh, yeah, I sometimes when I'm at home and I'm by myself, I do think about it. I wouldn't really call it flashback, but I do think about some of the things I've been through and where I've been, and some of my friends that didn't make it, and some of them are still there. I experienced some pretty crazy stuff, man, and I'm really fortunate to have survived it and to be out here in the world with it. I mean, and I got married in prison, and there was a point where I figured I was never going to get out of prison, and they took our family visits away, and so we got divorced. And so now I'm out here, we got remarried, we're living together, and it just and I think about how fortunate I am, man. It's
And I was going to ask you actually how you met your wife as well. So that's how that. Yeah, that's great that you've got that support. That's beautiful that you got to meet each other and you made it. It's working because any relationship's difficult, right? I'll be the first one to say that. But when you haven't had it for so long, right, and then the right person comes along, that must be a really rewarding thing for both of you to have that support for each other. Any regrets, or do you try not to think of it as regrets?
I don't know, man. You can't relive the past, so my whole, the whole prison experience, from the crime on, I wish it wouldn't have happened, obviously. And, I kind of regret some of the stupid shit that I did when I was in prison that kept me in there for so long. But, it is what it is. I did what I did. And like I said, I survived it. I can't relive the past. That's kind of something that, um, I don't like to do. I don't like to relive the past, like what if or any of that kind of stuff. I just kind of move forward from where I'm at now.
I think that's really
And,
good advice, Mitch. I think sometimes we can all get stuck, can't we? And not even have gone through an experience like yours, right? And we get stuck in like, what could have been, or what might be in the future, and not like you say, not just looking at the road ahead, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like what you're saying, and not worrying about what's in the rear view. It's gone. It don't matter.
yeah, well, to me, if you start focusing on your past and trying to relive it and trying to think, well, what if, or what about what that person did to me that caused this or that, then you start getting into some areas that can cause you to start being angry and hateful and stagnating, and it prevents you from moving forward. To me, it's a bad place to live. I like to live in the moment as much as possible. My wife always tells me, she'll be like, "Hey, babe, this guy bought your painting. That's great." And I'm like, and she'd be like, "Just live in that for a minute." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." I mean, I got a motorcycle. I love to ride, and she'll tell me, "Hey, you got a motorcycle and a truck. We got a place to live. We're together. Just live in that."
And all the great things that you're going to go on to do as well, with what you're doing. You don't know what the road ahead is right now, and that's exciting as well. Because I'm sure you're going to grow, and I've seen that your channel numbers have gone up as well, which is great. Um, so, what would you say is an important message right now? Do you think where you're at right now?
Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, my message to people in general is just, life can be pretty good, even if you're not, you don't have to be some big time baller, for life to be good. Yeah, I mean, figure out where you're at and where you want to be, and then figure out how to get to where you want to be. I mean, there's a road to get to where you want to be, and you have to figure it out. And then along the way, you're going to run into people that are going to help you get there. And just be, every day, just live in the moment where you're at and where you want to be, man, and be grateful for where you're at. And I'm super grateful for the people that have helped me get to where I'm at now. I'm sure they have no idea, how much they mean to me and how much they've done for me means to me, because I didn't get to where I'm at on my own, and no one gets to where they want to be on their own. I mean, that's pretty much my thing.
That's a powerful message. Thank you for that. That's something we need to all consider sometimes. That you just can't do it by yourself all the time. It's the people around you, and to appreciate that as well. Um,
Yeah,
a quick question: Are you allowed to travel out of the
yeah.
country, or can you do that? Or
I think I can travel out of the country now that I'm off parole.
oh, you're off parole. Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, I'm off
Okay.
parole. I'm a free man.
How long have you been off parole for?
Since October 1st of this year,
Gosh, I bet that was like, and yeah, wow.
about 3.5 months.
That must be a really weird feeling, is it? Like you're completely out the system.
Yeah, parole wasn't that hard for me. Um, a parole officer is pretty cool guys. It's just nice to be able to travel. I used to have to ask permission to travel outside of a 50-mile radius, and now I don't have to ask. You know,
Where would you like to go if you could travel anywhere? Where would you like to go?
I don't know. I'd like to ride my bike down Arizona. I have some friends in Arizona. I like to ride down to Texas, you know. I like to see the United States on my bike. Um, you know, a lot of people like to travel outside the country, and I said the other day, you know, I haven't even seen this country, so why do I want to go outside of the country, you know?
There's a lot, yeah, it's a lot of country in it, America. It's so big. You know, as a guy from Britain,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a huge place, yeah. And just also, I know we're at the very end of here as well, but I mean, anyone that's out there that maybe listen to this, that's, you know, thinks they can't get out of a gang, or, you know, there's no alternative to the problem that they're in. There's always an alternative, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. You know, Father Boyle down in LA, Gregory Boyle, he's got Homeboy Industries. He's helping guys in LA who want to change their lives. He's helping them do it. And he's got a whole crew of guys now that he's helped change their lives. And now they're helping guys change their lives. There's a way out. And, you know, there's a way out of a negative lifestyle. And there are people that will help you do it. There is. And I don't care what state you're in. I happen to live in California. I think it's a lot easier in other states too. You know, you just have to wake up and say, you know, I'm going to think for myself and I'm going to live for myself and my family and my friends, and I'm done with the negative bullshit. Um, it's not that hard, you know. There's always uh, there's always a way into negative living, and there's always a way out. And you know, if you're on the border, it's a lot easier too uh, to get away from it. You know, there's programs out there for, especially for youth, you know, that'll help people find a positive way to live, you know.
Well, thank you, Mitch. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, there's so much to your story, right? I mean, we've just touched really surface level stuff here. You know, there's shows and shows and shows, and you do talk a lot about what you've been through on your own YouTube channel there, so people can go there and watch those videos as
Yeah,
well.
I think we've got about 200 videos now,
Oh,
you
wow,
know.
that's good.
It's kind of crazy.
Damn, that's growing quick. Yeah.
And,
Okay. Yeah, that's really good.
you know, uh, you know, it's it's easy to say, you know, there's a way out of a negative lifestyle, but there really is, man. And you don't have to go to prison to change your life. You know, like I learned some vocational training. I got a bunch of different group therapy things I've been through, and but you don't have to go to prison to benefit from stuff like that, man. You can do it out here. There's vocational training out here. Um, there's schools. You know, like the pit stop monitor program that I was in. It was run by uh, I think it's called 5 Points or something. It's there's a it's a school down in LA that started in Frisco. Um, there's programs all over the country, man, in every town that'll help you get on your feet. If you're living on the streets, they'll help you get off the streets. You know, I used to trip out like when I was working in LA, there was some people living at the mission, and there was people living on the street, man, and they would you had to be there early to be first in line to get a job at the job readiness program. And then after you were there a few days, a week or two, they'd give you a permanent spot. And there were guys that were sleeping in front of that door to be first in line so they could get work and make a few bucks, man. And to me, it was just dedication, you know, and they were youngsters. And so there's a way out, man, but it takes effort, you know, and it takes a decision. So make the right decision, you know. I work my job now, we work with the police in Sacramento. We clear out illegal dumping, so we clean out homeless camps. And it's run, our job was created pretty much by the police. And I talked to the the officer that started the program. He's been a cop for 22 years. And he said when he first started as a cop, his kid asked him, "What do you do for a living, Dad?" And he said, "Well, I catch bad guys." But then after he had been a cop for a while, he had to revisit that. And he said, you know, there's really no such thing as a bad guy. He said, there's a few really evil guys here and there, But overall, there's no bad people. They're just people that make bad decisions. So make the right decision. That's, you know.
That's very true, actually. I like what you're saying there. And also, you're always going to be tested. I bet you've even been tested since you left prison. Do you know what I mean? In situations where, you've got to control yourself, you've got to, whatever it is that's causing you, whatever problem. Do you know what I mean? That we're always going to be tested. So there's no free ticket, is my point.
Yeah, there's no free rides out here, man. You have to earn what you want in life, man. But it starts with a decision, you know. It starts with a decision. You have to, if you make the right decision, you're gonna have the right consequences, you know.
Well, absolutely. Well, Mitch, I just want to thank you so, so much for coming on today. I really appreciate you giving us your time on your day off as well. So
Thanks
thank you for
for having
that.
me.
Thoroughly enjoyed speaking to you. And, thank you for, inspiring other people out there with your story. Appreciate that so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.